Whispers of the Forgotten. The grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly fell silent. 500 representatives from across the stars froze as the transmission echoed through the vaulted ceiling, bouncing off ancient marble imported from 100 worlds. The voice that spoke was unmistakably human, a species thought extinct for 3 centuries. To all sentient beings of the Galactic Assembly, the judgment hour approaches. We have not forgotten. That was all. 7 seconds of transmission that shattered 300 years of certainty. High Chancellor Vex, a tall, willowy Medusan with silver skin that rippled with bioluminescent patterns, grasped the edges of the floating podium. "Verify the source," she demanded, her melodic voice uncharacteristically sharp. The Assembly's AI responded immediately. Source confirmed. Transmission originated from the Perseus Void, Sector 9. Human vocal patterns match historical records with 99.8% certainty. Murmurs erupted across the chamber. The Perseus Void had been considered uninhabitable since the Great Collapse, a region of dead stars and radiation storms where no ship could survive. And yet, impossible. Commander Zurl of the Vexari Empire stood abruptly, his crimson scales flaring with irritation. The Vexari, reptilian warriors standing nearly 8 feet tall, had expanded their territory considerably since humanity's disappearance. The humans destroyed themselves in their final war. Every historical record confirms this. We all witnessed the burning of Earth. What we witnessed, came a quiet voice from the lower tier of the chamber, may not have been what actually happened. All eyes turned to Archivist Thela of the Quarren Collective. The small, gray-skinned historian had spent her century-long life studying extinct civilizations. Her specialization, humanity. "Explain yourself, Archivist," demanded Chancellor Vex. Thela approached the central platform, her 6-fingered hands trembling slightly as she activated her personal database. Above the assembly, a holographic image appeared. Earth, as it had been recorded 3 centuries ago, its atmosphere ablaze, continents cracking, oceans boiling away. For 200 years, I've studied the fall of Earth. The official record states that humans, in their final civil war, unleashed weapons of such power that they destroyed their homeworld and themselves with it. Her large, pupilless eyes scanned the crowd. But there are inconsistencies. Commander Zurl scoffed. The ravings of a historian looking for significance where there is none. Humans were dangerous and unpredictable. Their extinction was inevitable and a relief to the civilized galaxy. Thela continued undeterred. 17 ships were reported missing in the weeks before Earth's destruction. Ships capable of deep space travel. Additionally, colonies on Mars and Europa went silent not after, but before the catastrophe. "You suggest they escaped?" asked the Chancellor. "I suggest they were warned. And now, after 3 centuries, they have returned." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted over one another, some calling for immediate military mobilization, others insisting on establishing contact. The humans had been technologically inferior to many species when they disappeared, but 300 years was a long time to nurture a grudge and develop weapons. 3 cycles after the transmission, the first incident occurred. The frontier world of Kelix 9, a mining colony on the edge of Vexari space, reported all orbital defenses suddenly offline. No attack, no warning. The automated systems simply powered down simultaneously. When engineers managed to restart one of the defense platforms, they found a simple message embedded in its core programming. "We remember what you did." Within days, similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Defense systems failing. Navigation buoys reprogramming themselves. Communication relays broadcasting strange, distorted fragments of human music. In the emergency session of the Assembly's Security Council, the atmosphere was tense. "These are acts of war." Commander Zurl slammed his scaled fist on the table. "We must mobilize the combined fleet immediately." Ambassador Lyre of the Solari Confederacy, a being of pure energy contained within an ornate mechanical frame, emanated pulses of concerned blue light. Against what enemy, Commander? We have no ships to target, no bases to strike. These could be automated attacks set in motion centuries ago. Or a prelude to invasion, countered Zoril. Humans were always vengeful creatures. Archivist Thela, invited to the council to provide historical context, spoke up. If I may, human military doctrine always emphasized psychological warfare alongside tactical advantages. These incidents bear the hallmark of human strategic thinking, creating fear and uncertainty before revealing their true strength. Chancellor Vex turned her silver face toward the small historian. And what would be their motivation after all this time? Thela's expression darkened. History suggests only one answer: revenge. Deep in the secured archives of the Vexari Military Command, Commander Zoril accessed files that hadn't been opened in centuries. His personal authorization codes unlocked layer after layer of security until he reached records that officially didn't exist. On his private screen appeared documents classified at the highest level. Operation Silent Earth. 300 years ago, the Vexari Empire had been expanding aggressively, but human innovation and adaptability threatened their planned conquest of the Orion Arm. Humans reproduced faster, adapted quicker, and seemed to thrive on the very conflicts that exhausted other species. The Vexari High Command had determined they were an unacceptable long-term threat. And so, the operation was conceived. Not a direct attack that would have united the other species against the Vexari. Instead, a brilliant, terrible plan. Secretly foment civil unrest on Earth, provide advanced weapons to multiple factions, and let humans do what they did best: destroy each other. Except something had gone wrong. The weapons provided were powerful, but not planet-killing. Earth should have been devastated, weakened, primed for peacekeeping intervention, not utterly destroyed. The Vexari had intended conquest, not extinction. Zoril closed the files, his scaled brow furrowed. If humans had survived and discovered Vexari involvement in Earth's fall, the entire empire could be their target, and no one else in the assembly could know the truth. Chancellor Vex stood before the full assembly, her silver skin pulsing with stress patterns as she addressed the gathering. 42 systems have now reported technological disruptions. Analysis confirms these are not random failures but coordinated strikes against our defenses and infrastructure. The Security Council has voted to place all assembly forces on highest alert. The chamber, usually filled with debate, was uncharacteristically quiet. Fear had a distinctive smell, different for each species, but recognizable to all. We have also authorized a delegation to attempt contact with the source of these disruptions. If humans have indeed survived, we must understand their intentions. Commander Zoril rose to object, but before he could speak, every screen in the chamber suddenly activated simultaneously. The central holographic projector flickered to life without authorization. The face that appeared was human, female by their biology, with dark skin, short-cropped hair, and eyes that seemed to burn with cold fire. She wore a uniform of sleek black material with silver insignia that no one recognized. Galactic Assembly, the human spoke, her voice calm but carrying an undertone of steel. I am Captain Ilara Shaw of the Turan Reclamation Fleet. For 3 centuries, we have watched from the shadows as you built your civilizations on the ashes of our homeworld. Chancellor Vex stepped forward. Captain Shaw, the Assembly welcomes. We do not seek your welcome. Shaw interrupted. We seek justice. 300 years ago, Earth was destroyed not by human hands, but by outside interference, by weapons provided deliberately to escalate our conflicts, by sabotage of our planetary defense systems. Shocked murmurs spread through the chamber. Many representatives looked to their neighbors in confusion and horror. Shaw continued, her expression unchanging. We have spent centuries gathering evidence, building our strength, and preparing for this day. We know which among you were responsible. We know which stood by and watched. and we know which turned their backs when they could have helped. Commander Zarel's scales had paled to a sickly yellow. Across the chamber, Archivist Thela watched him with sudden understanding dawning in her eyes. "Tomorrow," Captain Shaw said, "a delegation of our leaders will arrive at these coordinates." Numbers flashed across every screen. The guilty will be named. Reparations will be demanded. Justice will be served. The transmission cut as abruptly as it had begun. In the silence that followed, Chancellor Vex turned slowly to face Commander Zarel. What does she mean? Outside interference. But Zarel was already moving toward the exit, barking orders into his communication device. Archivist Thela raised her voice, something she had never done in the assembly. 300 years ago, the Vexari Empire was conducting weapons tests in the Sol system, despite human objections. This is historical record. What isn't recorded is what those weapons were capable of. All eyes turned to the retreating commander, whose security detail now surrounded him protectively. Commander Zarel. Chancellor Vex's voice carried the weight of 3,000 years of Medusan authority. You will remain and explain yourself. Zarel turned, his reptilian features composed into a mask of diplomatic concern. Chancellor, the human is clearly unstable, making accusations without evidence. However, given the potential threat, I must coordinate our defensive response immediately. The Vexari destroyed Earth, Thela said flatly. That's what she's saying. And now humanity has returned to hold them accountable. The assembly erupted into chaos as Zarel and his security detail pushed through the crowd toward the exits. Guards moved to block his path, but Vexari shock troops appeared from nowhere, creating a protective corridor. As the first shots were fired within the sacred halls of the assembly, a new message appeared on every screen. The reckoning has begun. Across the galaxy, in perfect synchronization, every Vexari military vessel suddenly went dark, their systems locked down by commands coded centuries ago by human hackers who had planned for this very day. And from the Perseus Void, a fleet of ships unlike any the galaxy had seen began its approach to the assembly world. Humanity had not just survived, it had evolved, and it had come to collect a debt 300 years overdue. The reckoning storm. The assembly world of Harmonium had never seen such chaos. Vexari troops had seized the primary spaceport, while security forces loyal to the Chancellor established defensive positions around the assembly hall. Representatives from 100 worlds were caught in the middle, some fleeing to their embassies, others demanding emergency passage off-world. In the secured command center beneath the assembly building, Chancellor Vex watched tactical displays with growing horror. How many ships in the human fleet? Sensors detect 117 vessels of unknown configuration, reported Admiral Corva of the Assembly Defense Force. They've bypassed our outer perimeter without engaging. Their technology. It's unlike anything we've encountered. The Admiral's aide, a young Phyrexian with translucent skin that revealed his racing heartbeat, looked up from his console. Chancellor, we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel. Display it, Vex ordered. Captain Ilara Shaw appeared once more, now standing on what appeared to be the bridge of her ship. Behind her stood other humans, a diverse group showing variations in skin tone, facial features, and body types that reminded Vex how adaptable the species had always been. Chancellor Vex, Shaw said without preamble. Our delegation will dock in 30 minutes. We expect safe passage to the assembly hall. Captain Shaw, Vex responded, struggling to maintain diplomatic composure. Commander Zarel's actions do not represent the assembly. We need time to understand. 300 years, Shaw interrupted, her voice perfectly controlled yet filled with cold fury. That's how much time we've given you. We watched and waited while the truth was buried. No more. The transmission ended. Beside the Chancellor, Archivist Thela spoke softly. We should hear them out. If they wanted war, they could have begun bombardment already. Vex nodded slowly. Prepare the Grand Chamber and find Commander Zarel. In the Vexari Embassy, Commander Zerl was frantically trying to restore communications with his fleet. Nothing worked. Every system was locked out with the same message displayed. Justice Dying. What have you done? The question came from General Varric, Zerl's second-in-command, who stared at him with growing realization. What was necessary? Zerl hissed. 3 centuries ago, the humans were expanding too rapidly, developing technologies that threatened our supremacy. The High Command decided they needed to be contained by destroying their homeworld. Varric's scales rippled with shock. It wasn't supposed to go that far. Zerl slammed his fist on the console. The weapons we provided to their factions were meant to devastate, not obliterate. Earth should have been weakened, not destroyed. The survivors would have welcomed our intervention, our protection. And now they come for vengeance. Varric said quietly, against all of us. Zerl straightened, his warrior's pride reasserting itself. Not if we strike first. Activate the Omega Protocol. Varric stepped back. The planet killer. Here, you would sacrifice the assembly world to save our empire. Without hesitation. Zerl's claws tapped on a secured panel, revealing the hidden system. The humans aren't the only ones who planned for this day. In high orbit above Harmonium, the human diplomatic shuttle approached the main docking array. Inside, Captain Shaw sat beside an older man with gray hair and lines etched deeply into his face. "Are you sure about this, Admiral Hayes?" she asked. "After everything they did, we're offering terms." Admiral William Hayes, Supreme Commander of the Turan Reclamation Fleet, looked at the younger officer with eyes that had seen 3 centuries of exile and preparation. "Vengeance is easy, Captain. Justice is harder." He gestured toward the blue-green world below. "There are trillions of beings down there who had nothing to do with Earth's destruction. We're better than indiscriminate retribution." Shaw nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. But the Vexeri will answer for their crimes," Hayes finished firmly. "That's non-negotiable." The shuttle docked smoothly at the assembly spaceport, where a delegation waited, led by Chancellor Vex herself. As the airlock cycled open, humans set foot on an assembly world for the first time in 3 centuries. The assembly grand chamber had never been so full. Every representative, diplomat, and observer crowded in to witness the historic moment. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Hayes and his delegation of 12 humans, facing the Assembly Council. "How did you survive?" Chancellor Vex asked, breaking the tense silence. Hayes activated a holographic projector, displaying images of massive ships unlike any in the Assembly's records. "The Ark ships," he explained. 17 vessels built in secret, deep within the asteroid belt of our home system. When we received warning of what was coming, we evacuated as many as we could, barely 10 million souls from a world of billions. The images shifted to show the ships traveling through unknown regions of space. We hid in the Perseus void, using the radiation storms as cover. We built habitats in the shadows of dead stars where your sensors couldn't penetrate. We watched and waited, building our strength, developing technologies born from necessity and hardship. "For revenge?" asked Ambassador Lyre. "For justice," Hayes corrected. "We've spent centuries gathering evidence, infiltrating your networks, learning the truth. The Vexeri Empire didn't just provide weapons to human factions. They sabotaged our planetary defense grid, ensuring we couldn't stop the catastrophe once it began." Chancellor Vex turned to Archivist Thela. "Is this possible?" The small historian nodded gravely. Human defense systems failed simultaneously across their entire system. The statistical likelihood of such a failure without outside interference is virtually zero. "We have the proof," Shaw said, stepping forward to upload data to the assembly systems. Communication logs, weapons signatures, command codes, all traced back to Vexeri High Command. Before the evidence could be displayed, the chamber's security alerts blared. Admiral Corva's voice came through the emergency channel. "Chancellor, Vexeri warships are deploying something in low orbit. Energy readings are off the charts. On every screen appeared the image of a massive device emerging from the hold of a Vexari dreadnought, a sphere bristling with exotic energy emitters, already beginning to glow with ominous power. The Omega device, Hayes said grimly. A planet killer. Apparently, we're not the only ones who came prepared. Commander Zarel's voice filled the chamber. This is the price of your interference, humans. You should have stayed hidden in your void. Shaw turned to Hayes. Admiral, the Aegis. Hayes nodded and spoke into his communicator. Activate Project Aegis. Authorization Hayes Omega Earthfall. Above Harmonium, invisible until that moment, dozens of sleek satellites suddenly revealed themselves, their stealth fields dropping as they powered up. Beams of blue-white energy shot from each, converging on the Vexari device, surrounding it in a containment field that pulsed with power. In the chamber, Hayes explained calmly, we placed those in orbit 6 months ago. We came prepared for Vexari treachery. Impossible. Zarel's voice was frantic now. Our scans would have detected. Your technology is 300 years behind ours. Shaw interrupted coldly. We've had centuries with nothing to do but innovate. Your sensors can't detect our stealth systems any more than primitive radar could detect a quantum-shifted object. On the screens, the Omega device struggled against its containment, energy discharges flaring brilliantly, but the human technology held firm. This is your final warning. Commander Zarel, Hayes announced. Stand down your forces or face the consequences. Zarel's answer came in the form of Vexari warships powering weapons and launching fighters toward the human fleet. The first shots never reached their targets. The human vessels, previously holding position, suddenly blurred and shifted, their hulls seeming to phase in and out of normal space as they evaded fire with impossible maneuvers. Probability drives, Hayes explained to the stunned assembly representatives. Our ships don't just move through space. They move through possibilities, choosing the path where enemy fire misses. The battle in orbit was brief and one-sided. Human weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling Vexari ships without destroying them. Within minutes, the entire Vexari fleet hung powerless in space. We could have annihilated them, Shaw said quietly. Remember that. Commander Zarel was brought before the assembly in restraints, his scales dull with defeat. Behind him stood Captain Shaw and a security detail of humans wearing the silver and black of the reclamation fleet. Chancellor Vex rose from her seat. Commander Zarel of the Vexari Empire, you stand accused of crimes against sentient life on an unparalleled scale. The evidence presented by the human delegation is irrefutable. Earth's destruction was not an accident or the result of human conflict, but a deliberate act engineered by the Vexari High Command. Zarel raised his head, defiance still burning in his eyes. We did what was necessary. Humans were unpredictable, dangerous. History has proven us right. Look at their power now. They would have dominated us all. Admiral Hayes stepped forward. We never wanted domination. Humanity was reaching out to the stars in peace when you decided we were a threat to your expansion. You murdered a world because of what we might become. And now, Zarel hissed, will you destroy the Vexari homeworld in return? Prove me right about human vengeance. Hayes looked at the commander with something close to pity. No, that's the difference between us. We want justice, not genocide. Chancellor Vex addressed the assembly. The evidence will be reviewed by all member worlds. If verified, and preliminary analysis suggests it will be, the Vexari Empire will face sanctions unprecedented in galactic history. That's not enough, Shaw said firmly. Earth can never be restored. Billions of lives were lost. What do you demand? Vex asked. Admiral Hayes presented a data crystal. Our terms are here. The Vexari will surrender territory equal to what Earth and her colonies would have occupied by now. These worlds will form a new human commonwealth. Additionally, the Vexari will provide reparations to fund restoration efforts for surviving human culture and heritage. And Commander Zoril, asked the Chancellor, will stand trial before a tribunal of both human and assembly judges. Hayes replied, as will any others implicated in Earth's destruction. Zoril laughed bitterly. And you expect the Empire to accept these terms? Our fleet may be disabled, but we have colonies across half the galaxy. Shaw smiled for the first time, a cold expression that sent chills through the observers. Your colonies have already received our message, Commander, along with proof of your crimes. Even now, your own people are demanding answers. The Vexari public never knew what their leaders did in their name. 3 days later, the human delegation and assembly representatives gathered to formalize the agreement. The Vexari Imperial Council, faced with irrefutable evidence and internal unrest, had accepted the terms. Commander Zoril and 12 other high-ranking officials would face justice. Reparations would begin immediately. The human commonwealth would be established. In the Chancellor's private chamber, Vex spoke quietly with Admiral Hayes as the final documents were prepared. Your people showed remarkable restraint, she observed. Many species would have chosen annihilation over justice. Hayes looked thoughtful. We had 300 years to consider our response. Revenge was the easy path. We chose the harder one. And now, will humanity rejoin the galactic community? Cautiously, Hayes replied. Trust must be rebuilt. But yes, we return not just as survivors, but as teachers. Teachers. The Chancellor's silver skin rippled with curiosity. Of history's most important lesson, Hayes said solemnly. Actions have consequences, even across centuries. Justice may be delayed, but it need not be denied. As they spoke, in orbit above Harmonium, the human fleet rearranged itself into a formation unseen in the galaxy for 300 years, the ancient emblem of Earth, gleaming against the darkness of space, not as a threat, but as a promise. Humanity had returned. The galaxy had trembled. But from the ashes of an ancient crime, a new era would begin, one founded not on fear and destruction, but on justice and the long memory of a species that had refused to be forgotten. Across the stars, the news spread. The humans are back, and the galaxy would never be the same again.